What is happening? J Gamer Dude here, and the video game industry is failing video games and video gamers because, as it turns out, a recent study came out saying that 87% of classic games are critically endangered, as it is claimed by I think it was like the Video Game Preservation Association or something like that. Was it Foundation or Association? Something like that. But yeah, and when we're talking classic, we're not just talking like pre-2000, pre-1990, pre-1980 or anything like that. This is pre-2010. And just to put that into perspective, that's halfway through the PS3 generation. The PS3 came out 2006. The PS4 came out 2014. The 360 came out 2005. The Xbox One came out 2013 as well. So halfway through the 7th generation of consoles. And thinking about that now, from the beginning of video games up until 2010, that is a long amount of time. That is a vast amount of games. And then you gotta imagine maybe like a couple years into the 2010s, like 2011, 2012, you gotta imagine a lot of games aren't lasting that long anyways, because no one is looking to back this stuff up. No one is looking to, create, not no one, but like the foundations around video game preservation are doing whatever they can. But unfortunately, more often than not, all of this seems to be largely degraded due to game publishers and game developers just wanting to resell those games over and over again, or just completely leave them in the past and never touch them again, which kind of benefits no one in equal capacity. So at the end of the day, looking at this is actually kind of really sad, especially if you're around my age, which is like, high 20s, low 30s. You would likely remember the PS3 generation almost like as if it was yesterday. Because at the moment, I'm actually playing mainly on my PS3 at the moment. The game that I'm playing at the moment did release before 2010. It was Star Ocean: The Last Hope. And then like, I don't know, I've got like a copy of Fear 3 knocking about that I'm going to be playing next. There's The Darkness 2. There's a lot of good stuff. These are all PS3 games. 87% of games are no longer playable, cannot be legally purchased, and that's just shocking. It genuinely feels like the difference in time feels like it just doesn't really matter. Again, if you're my age, or near my age, you would likely just kind of like look back at time and be like, man, 2010 wasn't that long ago. So how is it that most games pre that time just don't exist anymore for people to be able to legally purchase? Now, emulation does exist and allow us to play games that have long since passed their due date, as long as a ROM of it exists. But that's also seen as illegal and generally seen as piracy. But then what about abandonware? There's an entire website purely based around the downloadable and executables that are deemed abandonware. Let's take like the original Need for Speed, for example, the first Need for Speed game. That was a game from like 1994 or 1996, I can't remember exactly which year, but like that game is absolutely abandonware. There's no way that game is being remade. There's no way that thing is getting a remaster. Because the thing is that if it did, it would get sold for pennies because there isn't much in the way of content and most of it can be blasted through in under a couple of hours. But even so, it's still a fun couple of hours, don't get me wrong. And especially when you look at, say, the fact that the Need for Speed has two versions, the PS1 edition and the PC edition. And when you look at the PC edition, that's the special edition that has slightly more content. Like a second tournament and things like that. And that's just like one out of hundreds, thousands of games. I'm pretty sure there are going to be a lot of games I'm going to be playing that are pre-2010 by the time I, put my PS3 out. Hell, I even bought a second PS3 from Japan that I did actually show off in this, in my on my channel before, when I actually bought tech from Japan. That's like sitting right next to it so I can, boost online trophies with myself. But at the same time, it's like, isn't there more that can be done to try and like find information, data, to just be able to save these really old games, because those of us that are really old, I guess, are gonna look at this with like a pang of sympathy almost, to be like, man, you remember the good times, the good old days. And the thing is that games generally, while they are looking better and are more complex in every sense of the word, they are also getting worse in equal capacity, due to not having either enough content, B, paywalling everything, needing to pay extra money for additional content, for season passes. Hell, it all started around 2010 when they did start implementing DLCs. And actually no, I would argue the horse armor was probably around 2007, 2008 realistically, but it was becoming a lot more prevalent by about 2010 anyways, like a lot more prevalent. And hell, when Capcom did like the on-disc DLC, that kind of defeated the purpose of DLC altogether by putting all the content in this disc and then only unlocking it after you paid the money for it. But the argument at the time was people were already paid for the disc, so whatever's on the disc should already be available to the person who is playing. That sort of thing. Now, that's what we were getting mad about before. Then we started getting mad about battle passes, and then loot boxes and then battle passes, and now all of it is just considered normal because older gamers are dying out, newer gamers are kicking in, and the general lack of meaningful amounts of content is now lacking. Not even large amounts of content, just the meaningful amount of content. Anything that can be considered playable, that actually has deeper meaning besides like a mission or two, but like a full-on story campaign that lasts you at least another 2.5 to if not 3 hours, that was DLC essentially. Man, I kind of miss those days. But even so, that just makes me seem like a crutchy old sod. And we may get remakes, but also sometimes remakes also besmirch the original in some way or capacity as well. So remasters, remakes, re-releases are all well and good. I mean, on PlayStation Plus, the highest tier, you are getting classic PSP, PS1, and depending on what region you're in, PS3 games available for download to play. Hell, I bought the class of 2G on PS3, which is like an enhanced port of the PSP game, the Class of Heroes 2. So at the end of the day, like, it kind of sucks that like a lot of games pre-2010 are no longer playable, and there's very little to nothing we can do about it. The fact that this is shocking, the fact that like online games are also being significantly more prevalent as well, because once those games shut down, they will outright be unplayable completely. There's a good reason why we trophy hunters hate online trophies, because their availability is just as limited as the availability of online games as they are. Being able to go back and play old games is actually pretty neat for the most part when you really look at it, but many people don't appreciate it. And unless you actually try to go back, play those games that you might think that you like, that do have antiquated systems that probably don't look as good, but could be just as, if not more so, fun than the games we're getting now. I don't know what to say. I don't know what I could do. I could buy like every game on the PS3 store and then try to hand that into the Digital Foundation, but I wouldn't even have the foggiest on how to do that. Yeah, I suppose it is what it is at this point. Hopefully moving forward we can change things, but I also highly doubt that that's going to happen. Until we see some actual proper change, don't think a lot is going to. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about classic video games being no longer playable and hell, no longer being accessible in any meaningful way or capacity that doesn't relate to emulation and ROMs. Let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. Like the video if you've made it this far and you've kind of felt like going down a bit of a nostalgia trip of older games. And subscribe to the channel, because I kind of wanted to share this since I'm currently playing PS3 games, and it's something that is kind of near and dear to my heart because I do still play a lot of old games. Hell, my PS2 is still upstairs and I still play on that. And with all that said and done, I'll see you guys next time.